Welcome to Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. This podcast is an educational forum on how to deal with complex aspects of immigration and pitfalls to avoid. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Now here's the host of Immigration Insider, Attorney John Nicelli.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Nicelli. I'm an immigration attorney in New York City, and I've been practicing immigration law for more than 40 years. I wanted to update the public and many of my clients as to the new requirement to register if you're living in the United States. So basically, the government is trying to find everyone that's from a foreign country that's in the United States. Basically, they want to know what their contact information is, where they live, where they work, and all that kind of information. The reason why they want that is because if you're unlawfully here, they're probably going to put you in deportation proceedings. But I'm going to go into the various aspects of what's required. All right, so the law just started within the last few days. And of course, the president said it was done by executive order, but it's not really executive order. This law has been in effect for many, many years. It just wasn't enforced. So now they're going to enforce the law, which actually was, they used to enforce it where people used to have to register at the post office. But that's long gone, and now they want you to register online, which I'm going to go into further detail. So first of all, let's consider those who are already registered. So there's a lot of very bad and false information out there on many of the social media sites. And those sites are saying, oh, you have to register, everybody has to register. That is absolutely 100% not true. If many people are already registered, so if you're a lawful permanent resident, for example, your fingerprints were taken when you became a resident, before you became a resident, actually, and you're already registered. If you were paroled into the United States, you're registered. If you were admitted as a non-immigrant, like a tourist, and at the airport, they issued a document called an I-94, which is your arrival departure document, you are considered registered. If you're in the United States and you are across the border, for example, then you're illegally here and you never registered anywhere, so immigration has no record of you. So those people, they want to register. If you were issued an immigrant visa or non-immigrant visa and you were fingerprinted at any point in the process, at a consulate in the world, at an embassy of the world, at a U.S. port of entry, then you're considered registered, no longer have to register. People who are in removal proceedings, they've been placed in the removal or deportation proceedings, they're already registered. Even if they were put in proceedings, 20 or 30 years ago, the fingerprints don't lie. So once your fingerprints are taken, you are not required to be registered again. If you have employment authorization, permission to work, not required to register. And let's say you live at one of the border states, like in Mexico. You live in Texas, on the Texas border by Mexico, or the Arizona border, or the California border. So if you have issued a border crossing card, you're registered, because in order to get that border crossing card, you had to be registered and fingerprinted. So if you applied for permanent residence, if you applied for permission to travel, for example, anytime that you were fingerprinted, you're considered registered. So now let's go into who's not registered, okay? And excuse me, because I do have to read some of this because it's all brand new to everybody. So, as I said before, any person in the United States that was never inspected or paroled, crossed the border illegally, came here in a car or truck, never was seen by immigration anywhere, they now want those people to register. Canadians, this is interesting because Canadian visitors are usually not fingerprinted. But now, because Canadians can enter the United States for up to 6 months with no visas. But if you're a Canadian, now you are now required to register. So in order to visit the United States. If you ever submitted a benefit to the United States, and you were not, and say that application was withdrawn, you filed a deferred action petition, or you filed a DACA, or a deferred action for child arrivals, or temporary protected status, and you never fingerprinted, well, basically, you must now be fingerprinted. All right. In summary, basically, they want anyone who has never been fingerprinted to be fingerprinted. Now, what's going to happen? Now, how do you register? So now in modern day, what they want to do is they want you to go to the USCIS website, and they want you to create an account. Once you create the account, you're going to give them all your information, and then you'll put in your date of birth, your place of birth, your address, all that information, and now you're considered registered. So basically, if you're lawfully here, you have nothing to worry about. If you're unlawfully here, I see that being a problem, because anyone who's unlawfully here theoretically could be put in removal proceedings. Now, a few years ago, more than a few years ago, in 2001, when the World Trade Center was attacked, after it was attacked, President George Bush at the time named 5 countries called the Axis of Evil Countries. And from citizens from those countries, if they're in the United States, were required to register. What those people did, because they were so scared, excuse me, they did register. And then after they were registered, each of them was placed in removal proceedings. If they didn't register and immigration found them, they were often not only arrested, but they were also detained for long periods of time. Now they changed it a little bit, because they claim that there's going to be fines and penalties for not registering, but no one knows what that fine or penalty will be. There's another thing that we are understanding, but when they're really not clear about, is that there's going to be criminal charges. I don't believe criminal charges can be implemented unless the United States Congress agrees to pass some kind of a law that would implement criminal charges for anyone who's not registered. And that would be a federal criminal charge if it does happen. I don't really see it being that bad personally, but with this administration, only God knows. Because what kind of a fine they're going to give you? $1,000 fine or 1 year in jail? That would be ridiculous. So I don't think that's even been worked out. But it's out there to scare the people, to say, well, you have to register, otherwise you're going to be locked up. And basically, once you register, you can expect that immigration could look for you or send you a letter to turn yourself in or something like that. So many people say, well, why would I want to register if immigration is going to come and pick me up? Well, we don't really know the answer to that question, because if you go by past actions of immigration, usually they're very lax in many types of enforcement, and I would think this would be a low priority enforcement if the person is just, say, overstayed their visa or just entered illegally. As long as you don't have a criminal record, I don't think you'll be a priority. And by the time they would get to you, I think it would take a lot of time and would pass, and a lot of effort for them to actually have a team of people to go after people. So, but the way they've worked in the past, when situations like this occurred, is they would just basically send you a letter. And the letter would say, please appear at your appointment for immigration on a specific date. Now, if you don't show up, then obviously they can come look for you. If you do show up, more than likely, they're just going to put you in deportation proceedings. I'm not so sure if they would give you a fine, because all of that is unknown right now. But according to the new rules, everyone must register. If you haven't been registered, or your fingerprints haven't been taken, it has to be done. So you have to go to the USCIS website. If you don't have a computer, you're going to have to ask somebody to help you, or go to a library where you can get a computer and just do the registration process online. That's what they're requiring right now. Now, another thing I wanted to speak to you about, and if that's not scary enough, because many people are very, very frightened and really don't know what to do, especially if they have families here. You need to know your rights if immigration does encounter you somewhere. So basically, the first thing to keep in mind is do not panic. If you see an immigration officer, do not panic. Okay? You are not required to speak to an immigration officer unless they have a warrant for your arrest. Even then, you don't have to speak to them, but you can remain silent. All right. So let's go through three different scenarios. So let's say you're at work. An immigration comes to your workplace and says they see you working, and they say, "I want your ID." Well, you don't have to talk to them for one, and number two, they're not even allowed to talk to you unless they have a warrant or search warrant to go into that place of business and specifically look for you. Now, if they go and they look for the employee's I-9s, you want to verify, if you are who you are, then again, you don't have to talk to them. And if they say, well, I'm taking you downtown and I'm going to put you in deportation proceedings, well, they may do that, but you say, well, I want a lawyer. I need to speak to a lawyer, and I'm not talking to you. And once your lawyer gets involved, then you can figure out, what the problems are and what the issues are and what can or can't be done for you. But silence is often golden. So the main thing is don't panic and don't speak. All right, that's rule number one. Now let's say they come to your house. Let's say ICE officers come to your house. They knock on your door and they say, "Let us in." Well, you don't have to open the door unless they have a warrant for a specific person. Okay, put the warrant. Show me the warrant in the window. Put it under the door. Let me read the warrant. If the warrant has my name on it, well, then you'd be required to open the door. But if it doesn't, you're not required to open that door. So, and again, you can remain silent. You haven't done anything and there's no warrant, no reason to open the door. And everyone needs to know this, okay? Don't be scared. Don't be frightened. Don't run, okay? Because running indicates you may be guilty of something and you don't want to do that. You just say, "Do you have a warrant for my arrest?" "No." "Okay, nice knowing you. Bye." Okay? Now, let's say ICE stops you in the street. So you're walking along the street, an ICE officer comes to you, "Let me see your ID." And you say, "Who are you?" "Well, I'm ICE. I'm from immigration." "Okay, that's nice. You cannot stop me. I did nothing wrong. Why are you stopping me? You don't like the way I look? You don't like the color of my hair? You don't like the clothes I'm wearing?" There is no reason to stop you. Unless they have a warrant for your arrest, they cannot stop you. That's called profiling. They cannot do that. That is illegal. What if you say, "Well," he said, "I want to search you." "No, I don't want you to search me." Well, if they suspect that you have something on you, like a weapon, a gun, or a knife, or something like that, they have the right to pat you down. That's a law enforcement issue, but that's not an immigration issue. So, not likely that an ICE officer is going to pat you down unless you're under arrest. All right, and you always have a right to speak to a lawyer. So never be afraid. Okay, say, "Listen, I know my rights. I'm in this country. And unless you have a warrant to arrest me or you even know my name, there's no reason that I need to cooperate with you." It's that simple. So tell them, "Have a nice day." It's that simple. I know what happens is that people get very frightened, very, very frightened, and they just submit. And then because they submit, that's how they get in trouble. All right. But you're not required to submit unless they actually have a warrant for your arrest and they're looking for you for some particular reason. And that's clearly not the case if you're walking in the street or if they came to your place of employment. Employment sometimes could be difficult because what happens is they check an I-9 document. So if an I-9 document, which is required to be filed by all employers, if they don't have it on file or they have information which is not correct on file, then they would have a right to question you. Because they'd want to say, "Well, this person may not be authorized to work because the documents, the I-9 documents, are out of order. So therefore, I have a right to speak to them." In that case, they'll have your specific name. And with a search warrant, they would then be able to speak to you and find out what your status is. But realize they didn't find out your status from you. they found it out from your employer because of a mix-up in the papers. So just remember that you're in the United States. It's the greatest country in the world, and you have rights. You do not have to speak to anyone you don't want to speak to unless they have a warrant for your arrest or they have information that led them to you and caused them to investigate you for whatever reasons. Other than that, you're as free as can be. So good luck to everyone. If you have any questions, you can always call my office. If you get apprehended or you get arrested or detained or a family member does or a friend, you can always call our office at 212-227-8020. That's 212-227-8020. Or you can contact us by email at john, Nicelli, Nicelli.com. That's john@johnnicelli.com. Thank you.
You've been tuning into Immigration Insider with your host, Attorney John Nicelli. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, johnnicelli.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.